Okay, it's the end of the session with my buddy Whiskey here. Come. Remember, always give the treat first, and they should hear the command word after the treat, and use one-word commands, and be careful how you say it. Sit, sit, sounds like two different command words to dog, so always say it the same way. Nothing wrong with saying either way. Just be consistent. Okay, so Diesel, we weren't able to work with him as directly as I'd like to. I think he's fearful. He's also, I think, protective. He also worked with Dylan's dog training, and they were practicing the snap praise, which is putting a prong collar on, jerking it up, which nobody should ever do to any dog. And so I think that for him, white males, he had some bad experiences as well. So I think I kind of represent the boogeyman of sorts. So what we did through the session is really we worked on things of changing and creating a healthy leader-follower dynamic. I'm going to summarize some of those things right now. So the first thing we talked about, first thing we did was we tried to arrange to do a greeting outside. And what I usually do is I leave a lot of treats, a trail of treats that leads the dog to me. And I kind of position myself so I'm about a house away inside the dog's territory. Sometimes they're more reactive. And I arranged it so the dog was approaching me this way. So I was sitting, front facing is confrontational for dogs. So the problem was Diesel stopped taking the treats even though we know he likes the treats. So if a dog stops taking a treat that you know that they like, that's a good indication that they are close to their threshold or their limit. And we don't want to push past the limit because that's basically hysterical, just like us. If I'm hysterical, you're not going to be able to teach me anything or rationalize with me. Same sort of thing for the dog. So we need to be able to recognize these signs so we can see them before the dog gets to that breaking point, because once that's the case, he's not going to listen to anything. So what I would have you do, I just went over this with actually another client, is I would arrange and practice that same technique that I showed you, but with nobody at the end of it. And when you practice this, there's nobody out in your neighborhood. It's a nice quiet day. There's no lawn mowers. There's no leaf blowers. There's no planes overhead or craziness. And you just go out there and there's a treat, and then he finds another treat. The treats are about anywhere from like 1 to 3 feet apart. And they should lead all the way to where I was sitting. So the idea is we practice putting him on a leash, having him be calm on a leash, taking him outside, and he gets those treats, and we get over there and there's nobody there. After you do that for about 5 or 10 times, it's like, this is that game where you put the leash on and I got to be calm, and then we walk out and I get a whole bunch of treats as we walk to the post. Oh, hey, there's somebody there today. So like we talked about in the video above, we would kind of break the activity down in the easiest version possible and help the dog practice each individual step. And then we gradually make the steps more and more difficult. So that's kind of a version of that. Now, what I would do eventually, when you get to the point where he's comfortable and he goes out there, he's eating the treats all the way to the deal. Only at that point would you start arranging to have somebody there. I would get somebody that is. I would start off with somebody that is not like me. I.e. not a white male. Somebody that doesn't fit into that category that he is naturally predisposed to not like. So if you find somebody, a person of color or a girl or whatever it is, so that they're sitting down there, so he's already practiced going up there and being in a good mood, and the person I meet now is not a threat. And when I get to them, that person reaches over the side, make sure they're holding the treats to the side and giving a treat, and only if you feel comfortable. So when you're bringing the dog out, the person needs to not look at you. The dog's going to be approaching at this angle. The person should be looking this way, sitting on the curb, looking into the street. And so don't let Diesel pull towards you, towards the guest, or if your gut tells you that Diesel's not in a good, it's not good, listen to your gut. We have instincts for a reason. And so if you can't get, if you don't feel comfortable enough, then basically call Diesel a couple of feet away, do a little bit of that focus exercise that I'll talk about in a minute, and then that person gets up, and then you walk around the block, and they're walking maybe 2 paces in the street, you're on the sidewalk with Diesel. Just all we do is we walk, come back home, and then that person leaves. So Diesel had a pleasant experience going up, just going to that position first, once he get comfortable with that. Then he went there and met a person. And then after that, he went for a walk, which he likes going for walks. That person didn't ask him to do anything. The person was far enough away where he didn't react to that person. We want to be as close as we can without the dog reacting. So don't push too far where you're going to get those. Don't ride on the edge too much. But the idea is we want the dog to practice being around somebody without reacting to them. And after they practice at 5 feet, then we do the walk at 4 feet, 3 feet, 2 feet. It's not necessarily a foot each time. You go at the dog's pace. But eventually you get to the point where the dog can be walking right next to the person, and the person has proven they're trustworthy. It's been a positive experience. The dog enjoys it. And what do they remember doing the last time I didn't react to that person? Last time before that I didn't react. So that's why we don't want to get to the point where the dog is pushing the boundaries. This is just for you guys, so it's not a big deal. And gradually get the dog closer and closer towards the real world situation. Now, Diesel, again, having some negative situations with some males, I think has contributed to this, and he's a little insecure. Now, something we didn't talk about in the session, one of the great things you can do to help a dog boost his confidence is to teach them some new tricks and commands. So I didn't get to see it for Diesel so much, but I did see it for Whiskey. Whiskey's a very smart little dog. So what I'd like you to do is go to YouTube or wherever you want, just Google easy dog tricks. Start teaching the dogs new tricks and commands. I'd like you to do this as well. So it'd be nice if you guys could switch off. 1 week you're teaching both dogs separately, sit or whatever it is, and then you tell your partner what the command word is and the motion, all the rest of that stuff. Then all week long, you want me to pet you? Roll over. You want to go outside? Roll over. You want your food? Roll over. After a while, you just look at the dog's like rolling over. So then the next week, you take over and you teach both dogs separately again a different command, and then all week long you practice that. So after the end, and if each one of you does that with 4 different commands, at the end of 2 months, you have now 8 commands. These are great ways to redirect the dog's attention. This will deepen the dog's relationship with you because you're associated with the dog learning those things. It also boosts the dog's self-esteem and confidence. Like I mentioned earlier, or I think off camera, insecure dogs are usually the ones that are most reactive. So building up his confidence by teaching new tricks and commands is a very easy, and it doesn't cost. I don't have to come out here. I'm happy to send a trainer, but you can go to YouTube and find easy dog. Make sure they're easy tricks. Just do a circle in front of you, or walk around you, or walk between your legs. Doesn't have to be very elaborate. You want to get stuff that you can start knocking out, because especially the first 2, you want to get into a groove of doing it yourselves. All right, so that's a nice way to help boost his self-esteem, which will have a nice prophylactic improvement on his life. We also talked about exercise. Now, Diesel's 10 years old, so he doesn't need a ton of exercise, but exercise can set a dog up for success. A lot of us don't ever consider that we can actually exercise our dog before we take her for a walk, or exercise it before people come over, like the lawnmower guy, or a guest, or whatever the case may be. So, a couple things. I forgot to mention this during the session, but dogs burn more energy in a walk by sniffing than they do from walking. So when we did have Diesel come out to try to meet me, he wasn't really interested in the treats, but he was interested in sniffing. So if you're doing that activity and he wants to sniff, that's great, because remember, the goal is to get him to sniff, not to make a circuit. And then we think about the walks the wrong way. We're going to do the circle, and the conclusion is getting back to our front door. And if the dog stops to smell, we look at that as a detraction. Well, that actually should be what we're looking for. So if you're going to walk your dog, just give yourself a period of time. And instead of walking around a loop, just say, I'm going to walk this direction if I have 20 minutes, I'm going to walk this direction for 10 minutes. When 10-minute timer goes off, I cross the street, and then we come back so we have fresh sniffs. I don't care if I only go 3 houses, because my goal isn't a circuit, it's just the amount of time of sniffing. And now he's practicing doing something he should be doing on walks. Dog experience the world by sniffing. Okay, so before I forget, I'm going to go over one other thing. So the guardians practice kind of different scenarios in case one of them is maybe injured. So the primary guardian likes to lay down on the floor, and the other guardian comes over to try to pick her up off the floor, and Diesel really doesn't like that. So similar principle, what we want to do is break that activity down into small individual steps. So the first step is she goes and lays down, and the person who's going to go over there just goes over and gives Diesel a treat. And then she gets up. And then she lays down again, and person goes and gives Diesel a treat. So all what's happening is she lays down, and this person gives me a treat. He's not walking towards her. He's not doing any monkey business. It's just, hey, she lays down, I get a treat. Good. I like it when she lays down. Do that about 4, 5, 10 times until Diesel's pretty relaxed. The next step is she lays down, and the person walks over to her and reaches down and just touches her, and then turns and gives Diesel a treat. So the action comes first, the dog reward comes second. And again, we're not trying to pick her up. And if reaching, he gets in front of you, then maybe we, instead of reaching all the way to her, we just go like this. Just only reach a foot, and then pull our arm back, and then give Diesel the treat. So we want to do this in small incremental steps until eventually we can reach down and touch her, and then give the Diesel a treat. Reach down and grab her hand, and pick it up a little bit, and put it down and give Diesel a treat. Pick her up like so, and sit her halfway up, and then put her back down and give the Diesel a treat. And anytime that Diesel reacts, back up to the previous step, practice that step a couple more times, and then try to go to that next step when Diesel seems nice and relaxed. Eventually get to the point where if you do all the individual steps, you go over there, she lays down, you go over there, you grab her hand, you pull her up into a stand, and then you give Diesel a treat. And at that point, once she's standing, I would come up with a command word that means this action. So I call it first aid. or whatever it is. Remember, use fun command words whenever possible. Ambulance, Dr. Feelgood, or whatever you want to say. And so that way, this activity now is something that Diesel likes having go on because he sees it as a reward and a positive thing for him. And nothing bad seems to happen, and you broke it down into individual steps and help him understand it. Okay, we also talked about exercise, and getting back to this is the summary of the stuff that we went over. So exercise, remember, average dog needs an hour's worth of exercise every day. Diesel, being a 10-year-old, doesn't need that much, but the more you exercise, the longer he will last. I just lost a 14-year-old Dalmatian, and my first Dalmatian didn't make it to 13 because when he started getting old, I babied him. This guy, when he started getting old, I made him do everything on his own. People were like, you're a jerk. Well, he lived to almost 15. And so, especially older dogs, you got to get them moving. Now, I didn't go over this with the Guardian outside of now, but this is easier for you because you can remember it. You might want to try him on some Cosequin. Cosequin. You already have them on that? Okay. And so if you can get one with chondroitin, some of those things can actually help with the joints and all that. Usually you try it for a month. If it doesn't work, it doesn't make a difference, then it's probably not going to, it's usually for arthritis, which a lot of dogs have. Okay, so make sure you check with your vet for all these things to make sure he's fine. If he starts limping or having difficulty after doing these things, we want to discontinue because these are to help him, not to hurt him. First one I do is the doggy stairmaster. Show the dog I have a treat at the top of the stairs. When he's looking at it, I throw the treat to the bottom of the stairs. When he licks it up, I say Jamaica or Cabo or Hawaii or whatever the one word is that means go to the bottom of the stairs. Then, and remember, the treat goes in the mouth first, and then I say Cabo. Then I show him I have a treat, and Diesel runs to the top of the stairs, give him another one, call it this one Denver. Then you pull out another one, throw it to the bottom of the stairs. Remember to do this with an empty stomach. Dog's stomach can flip over. Big barrel-chested dogs should never exercise with food in their stomach. About 90 minutes after eating before you exercise them. And so the first time you do it, keep on doing it until he's like, you're crazy. I've been down there 33 times. I'm not going down there no more. Now we know what his maximum number is. We want to exercise about 50 to 75% of maximum number multiple times a day. If your dog comes up and is re-sitting for attention or scratching or whining or running around the room, it's probably telling you, I need some exercise. I need some stimulation. Ask yourself, how long has it been since I've exercised the dog? If it's been longer than an hour, get the dog some fetch or some exercise. Dog exercise is best every about 2 to 4 hours. So once you start interpreting, instead of the dog being naughty, the dog is saying, I need to play fetch. You go play fetch, the dog comes in and lays down just like Whiskey is right now, and he's a well-behaved dog. All right, so that's one of the options. Another one is to get him a doggy backpack. It looks like a harness, and you can put bottles of water or sand or some sort of weight in there. That makes the walk more efficient. Also, it gives the dog a job, which for some dogs, you put that vest on, they're like, I'm working now. And so my job is to do this instead of barking and lunging. Remember to stop and let him sniff as much as he wants to on walks, as long as it's safe to do so. Let me see. We also talked about scent games. You can Google scent games. There's a lot of versions of that. You can also use a snuffle mat, and I would definitely recommend ordering one of those from Amazon. If you go to Amazon, the first one, you'll see the gray one. It's about $35. That's the one I usually recommend. So feed him out of the snuffle mat. That's almost like a walk. Keep on using that treat dispensing toy for the chicken because that's something that's good for him to work for his food. It's a nice way to boost some energy, burn some energy, if I can speak properly. Let me see. The other thing you can do is playing fetch. That's another great thing to do. And then, well, I guess I already talked about scent games. So if let's say there's a yard where he has difficulty because there's a dog that barks a lot and he doesn't want to sniff in that outside that yard, sometimes they use finely shredded cheese. So if, like, let's say the yard starts right here, we're walking this way, and this is where the yard starts, and this is where the dog is. Well, I know once I cross into his yard, then he's going to bark at this dog. So I might take the shredded cheese and put a little bit of grass on this side of the property line. The dog doesn't know that. I do that first, and then I lead him, and then I kind of tap deer, and Diesel's like, oh, there's shredded cheese. Sometimes you have to do it in your own front yard, get the dog used to it, but now he's sniffing, looking for that cheese, and eventually you can have that cheese, if this is the property line, this is where the dog is. At first it's over here, then it's here, then it's here, then it's here. And eventually, and he's walking right by this dog that's barking, or the person that's there, because he's sniffing all of this, sniffing and licking up all this cheese that's on the ground. Let me see. Those are some forms of exercise, but there's other things that you can do as well. So try to incorporate those, and again, make sure there's things that don't have a negative impact on him. Next thing we talked about are rules. Dogs without any rules often see their humans as peers. If they see you as a peer, then listening to you is optional. I'm pretty sure that's the case here because the Guardians really don't have very many rules, which is very common for most of my clients. For dogs, burning energy is a form of currency. and leaders are typically the ones who burn the energy to enforce the rule. So if we don't have any rules, we don't really look like we're acting like a leader to many dogs, and you can get away with it when you have one dog. You have multiple dogs, it's much more important. A couple of housekeeping things. Remember, any attention is validating. Good attention is bad attention. The only time I ignore the dog is if it's trying to get attention from me. It's barking for attention, that I ignore. But if he's barking at the door, you have to go and correct that immediately or redirect him towards something else. Not saying no is the same thing as saying yes. Remember, anything a dog is doing when you pet it is what you're reinforcing. So for the roommates who go over there and pet him and say it's okay when he's being aggressive or barky, he's getting rewarded for that. So you can reward unbalanced states of mind like stress and fear and anxiety and aggression and excitement. But you can also do it for positive things. That's why we call it petting with a purpose, which we'll talk about here in a second. Yes, you go get him, Whiskey. Okay, so good attention, bad attention, same thing. Anything your dog's doing when you pet is what you're reinforcing. Anything your dog does in your presence that you don't disagree with is giving your seal of approval too. Now, dogs learn through repetition, consistency, and good timing. You have essentially 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog for them to make that connection. So when you're correcting these things, it's important to correct right away. Get up off the couch and do it right away. Don't wait for the commercial or break or whatever it is. You miss that 3-second window. Now, let me see. We talked a little bit about dog psychology. Remember, breaking a rule is not a great way to reward a dog. It's actually very confusing. And enforcing rules is not mean. And rules are not negative. If you want to let him break one of these rules, it should be because you decide you want to do it, not because, look at such a gentleman, not because you want to reward him by breaking the rule, just because you feel like letting the dog on the couch or letting the dog do whatever, just because you want to, not because the dog does certain activity. Now, when Whiskey leans, jump up on you, if you can, lean way back in that chair and just disengage with him completely. Let him know, boy, you are so on the wrong path. And eventually he'll start doing the things you want, which we'll talk about here in a sec. So the rules that I usually suggest are not allowed to be allowed on the furniture, and these rules should be in place for at least 90 days, bare minimum. Most dogs a lot longer than that. So I usually say 90 days or as long as the problem's still going on. At the end of that period of time and the dog's behaving well, then if you want to invite it, it's a one-time exception. Now you can get the X mats for sit. And you notice there, I said it twice. I told him what to do during what I refer to as the command stage, and when he did it, I gave him a treat, and then said it a second time. That second time is the most important time to say it. And most people do sit, good dog. Lay down, good dog. Crash, good dog. Poop, good dog. Well, good dog means everything. Saying just the command word when they're within 3 seconds of doing the action is the name of the game. Okay, so right there, tell them to sit. But don't reach the handle yet. So the guardian was reaching for the handle and then going to tell him to sit. So I don't even start the process until and he has to pay for what you want. So right there, just tell him, sit, and then open the door. Now he went to pet, and you can do that, but what the dog wanted was to go through the door. So if I sit and then the door opens, well, shoot, I might sit to get that door to open. Maybe he doesn't want to go. Maybe he just thought Diesel was there. That's one of the rules we're going to get to here in a second. All right, so remember you can get those X mats from Amazon or Chewy, and those hold the spots. Sometimes those are a little bit easier. Also, we want to get him to use the dog bed in the living room. So what we do is show him we have a high-value treat. We have a name for each dog bed. I show him I have the treat. Sit. Passive training, we'll get to that in a sec. So I throw it on the dog bed. Remember, a good dog bed should be light cream, white, or light gray, no pattern, and preferably one that's like a cushion without a lot of rolls or like a duvet cover. So you can see that pretty easy because of the contrast. If it's a brown one or there's a pattern and it's dark, you might not see it. So the first way I do it is I show the dog I have a treat and I throw it onto the dog bed. He runs over, he's got one or more paws on the dog bed. When he licks it up, I would say the word Tulsa. And then wait for him to vacate. Don't wait for him to go too far away. As soon as he vacates it completely, all 4 paws are off, throw another one there. Do this about 15 or 20 treats in a row. Take about 2 to 5 minutes. So now he's like, you'll see him going there faster and, to get those treats right away. So then after doing about 20, 25 of those, then you wait for him to get distracted and look that direction, and you just throw another one on the dog bed without him hearing it. Then he's just gonna, like, if we just found a whole bunch of $100 bills somewhere, you're gonna look to see if there's another. That's what he's gonna do. He's gonna look, there's a treat. He runs over there and you say Tulsa again. So now he's the one that made the decision rather than us making it for him. The third way I do it is I lure him over there and put him in a sit or an LAY, but instead of saying sit or lay, I would put the treat in his mouth and say the word Tulsa. So these are 3 ways to entice him to go there. And I would do this whole repetition that I just talked about, tossing when he's not looking, and then leading. Do that like about 25 treats. Do it like, you're gonna get this in a day or two. Do this the first day. It won't take very long before he just starts going there on his own. And when he does, make sure you have treats with you. As soon as he goes to the dog bed on his own without you telling him, throw a treat. Try to have a good arc. So he didn't even see it's coming from you. He's like, Jesus, I come to the dog bed now, it's just raining treats. Why don't I stay here? And so after a while, you have assigned a marker of Tulsa or whatever the word is you want. That means to go over there and lay down the dog bed and get a treat. Well, now you can tell him to go there, and he probably will start doing it on his own, especially when he's not allowed to be on the furniture. Best place I like to put it is underneath the TV, because that way it's kind of out of the way, and the dog's like, man, you really like me, when we're really just watching the TV. Other rules, you have to sit at the door. I talked about this in the above video. Go to the door, tell the dog to sit one time. And I'd put the box on the floor wherever you want him to sit. And you might do this independent of letting him out, like I talked about in the video above. Go over there, tell him to sit when he's in that place, sit, give him the treat, but I would assign a separate command word for his station. So call it Tahiti or whatever the word is you want to use. And I've seen people put like painter's tape and make a square, and the dog has to sit there. And then they put post-it note or whatever the name of it in there. So that way each dog has a separate name that means go to your position by the door. So I would teach him that separately. Then for the rules for the door, sit at the door, is the dog wants to go outside, I go to the door and I say sit. Well, in this case, I might say like position. And if the dog goes there, then I reach for the handle to open the door. If he doesn't, then I pull my hand back and I would go sit down nearby and I wait for 1 minute. After 1 minute, then I would go back and again tell him the command word to go to the box or to sit at the door, depending on how strict you want to get about it. There we go. And then as soon as he sits, you reach for the handle again. And as soon as he gets up, you pull your arm back and you tell him to sit. If he sits within 3 seconds, you continue. If not, you go sit down on the couch, or I actually sit on the table here. And this time I'll wait for 2 minutes. Next time I'll wait for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. Keep double length of time, but make sure you're seated. Eventually, when you go, he'll go sit at the door as his way of saying, I want you to go outside. And if you break down all those individual steps and stop each time like I just talked about, you'll be able to open that door all the way like I talked about in the video above, and he stays seated. All right, and for that, you could open the door a crack. Right now he's inside, the guardian's kind of motioning towards him, but you can open a crack and just say sit. And if he doesn't sit, then you can either close the door, or I would just leave it there, and I would just turn and look away. Remember, the more you say it, the less you mean it. So don't repeat yourself, because otherwise I was like, yeah, I do it the 19th time they ask. You do it once, or you don't know when I'm going to ask you again. You better take advantage when the opportunity is there. Okay, so that'll teach him to sit at the door. I would have him sit before going in or out. Also, any other door in the house, I would also make both dogs sit before you cross the street anywhere. So that's another more subordinate thing for them to do, and it's just good practice for them to get in to sit before they go across the street. Also, shouldn't be allowed to come in the kitchen when you're preparing food. Shouldn't be allowed to be within 7 feet of any human who is eating food, and I would recommend no more giving people food. If you don't know how to do those things or you have difficulty, if you go to my website and search for kitchen or invisible, you'll be able to find videos where I teach people how to stay behind an invisible line or how to stay out of the kitchen. And so it'll walk you through how to do it. If you have any other questions, please call me or text me about it. Look for other examples of rules. Are they excited for you to pull out the leash?
Yes.
So if you search for calm leash, that's another technique that I have videos that'll show you how to teach your dog to stay calm while you're leashing them up. Because the energy they have in the house before you take them outside is the energy they're going to carry on the walk. So if you achieve a calm and balanced state of mind in the house, you're going to have a much more productive and enjoyable walk. And don't be afraid to walk Whiskey and just exercise Diesel with something else, because right now you're probably not having as much fun walking Diesel as you would be for Whiskey. It's a nice, beautiful day. This is about to be a spring in Nebraska, which is one of my favorite seasons here. Take advantage of it. Go out and clear your head, especially during COVID. Get yourself a nice walk in, and he shouldn't be penalized because Diesel can't walk properly or Diesel has reactivity issues, and that'll actually be helpful for him. You'll start passing dogs where he doesn't react because Diesel doesn't react. He follows Diesel a lot. So this way he gets practice not doing those things. All right, we also talked about, let me see, we also went through petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is if the dog tells you to do something or you want to pet the dog. You're going to tell the dog to sit or to lay down first. And if you tell the dog to sit and it doesn't sit, playing hard to get, remember, it works great for dating, it works great for dog training too. So if you don't sit within 3 seconds of me saying it the first time, I'm watching Wheel of Fortune and you missed out on your opportunity. And then later on, when I ask you again, the dog's like, shit, I shouldn't curse, but if I don't do it her way, she's got other things to do. She's not asking very much. As soon as I sit, you pet the dog under his chin and say the word sit and only the word sit, and pet as much or as little as you want. Avoid reaching over the head. You can pet air dog anywhere else, but anywhere you want except for here. But if all things are equal, try to pet under here. But if it's more convenient, scratch his butt, scratch his butt. Now, even if you want to, so what you're telling the dog is, if you tell me what to do now, nothing happens. But if I tell you what to do and you do it, you get a reward. After a while, the dog is more inclined to want to do that, and the dog will figure this out and will start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for the attention. When it does that, make sure you do reach over and pet it. Otherwise, it'll go back to nudging you or the other things. Now, I use the watchword of paycheck. Paycheck means I suspect you forgot to pet with a purpose. So if you come in and see one of your partners or your roommates is petting the dog and standing up, you say paycheck. That person has to stop petting, even if they did it right. They tell the dog to sit. If the dog sits, they pet under the chin and say sit. And then say, actually, when you flush the toilet, I continue to petting, even though the dog stood up when you flush the toilet. That's okay. But even if you want to pet the dog, you still tell it to sit. If it doesn't, like I said, playing hard to get works great. So if it doesn't do what you want, it doesn't get any attention. So if you're in a habit of petting with a purpose, it'll take you guys about a month to get in a habit. So use that paycheck as the reminder. I suspect you're forgetting without a purpose. Not gotcha. We don't argue about it. Somebody says paycheck, even if they're right, I stop, tell the dog to sit, and then I tell them explain it after. If you get in a habit of doing that, every time you do that, increases the dog's respect for the person as an authority figure. It boosts the dog's confidence because it's earning versus being given the attention of pets for no reason. It also makes your pets more valuable because they're not just given out. You have to earn these suckers. And also helps your dog practice sitting, which is also very helpful. Let me see, what else? We also talked about passive training, which is basically celebrating the things the dog does that we like. Oh, they have a second dog too, huh?
They have 3.
Yeah, 3. There you go. Yeah, a little one looks like a Jack Russell. Two Jack Russells are wieners. All right. So the other one is passive training. Passive training, again, is celebrating the things the dog does what we want. Remember, a lot of times we give dogs commands that represents the end of fun. It's having a great time yelling at these dogs over here, and we don't want our neighbors to hear that, so we call a dog inside. We close the door, and the dog's like, well, shoot, now I can't yell at the dogs and bark anymore. You're the end of fun. I'm not going to listen to you next time. So for passive training, what we want to do is wait for the dog to do the action on their own without asking them to do it. So every time the dog comes to you, pet it on its chin and say, come. Every time it sits, pet it and say, sit. Every time it lays down, crash or chill, or whatever the words you want to use. I have different words for each dog to eat. I say grub, chow, feast, and lasagna. Chow dog actually passed away. But so the dog whose word is lasagna, every time for 4 months he took his first bite of food, I said the word lasagna. So when the other dogs heard lasagna, there's no food in their mouth. But when Max hears lasagna, that means I get to eat. So now I can just yell lasagna, and that's his command word to go and eat. So come up with fun command words for those sort of things. The new tricks that you're teaching him, come up with funny command words. You can say roll over. I say stunt dog. One of the tricks I taught my dog, and it would be great for him, is to teach the dog to crawl on its belly. And at first I called it worm because I like using fun words, but I realized worm isn't a very fun word. So now I say sneaky. I say sneaky, and Max drops down, and he wiggles across the floor, and it looks funny as hell. And people laugh. That motivates the dog, especially because Diesel has some issues. And so the more that people are laughing, that's going to make him put him more on ease. So try to come up with some those funny command words when you're training him new tricks and commands. For passive training, since we're celebrating the dog's actions that we like, that's usually what I use as a watchword, is celebrate. So if I'm sitting here and the dog walks up to me and I didn't see it because I'm enjoying the beautiful sunset, somebody says celebrate, I just turn and I look at the dog and start petting it under his chin, and then I evaluate, what is it doing? Oh, it's sitting, I pet it and say sit. If it's standing there, I pet it, assume it's a come. I taught one of my dogs to grumble this way. When I come home from work, he would sometimes bark, sometimes he'd go, which I thought was funny. So I started petting him and saying grumble. Now he comes home and he goes, and he talks. It's funny as hell. But how would you teach your dog to do that? It's very difficult. But being observant and just letting your dog know through your actions the things that you like, you're going to motivate the dog to want to do those things. Most people train their dogs to do the wrong things because good attention and bad attention is the same thing. They don't know what to do to earn their keep or to make us happy. So they become a guard dog, or they patrol the yard, or whatever it is. Well, now they're like, boy, they like it when I sit, when I come, when I lay down. All the fun stuff, all the stuff that we actually do want is the easiest way to get our attention. Okay, let me see. I did this in a little reverse order. Now is when I would usually talk about the exercises that we talked about, but we already did those. Now, if you have any questions, please text me. If I don't hear from you, it means I assume that everything's going right. So I have videos on all these stuff. You can't find the stay out of the kitchen video or the loose leash or the calming or whatever it is, message me. And I'm going to forget to put it in here. So when I do call you, after you watch this, when you watch this video, text me because I guarantee I will forget. Say, hey, David, can you put that thing about clicker training the fence fighting dog in our write-up? And so I have a client, her dog likes to go and fence fight. It runs kind of like one of your dogs, one of these dogs does. And once it's outside, the people are oblivious to the dog. The dog will pay zero mind to them. What we did was we used a clicker for this. And I have a video that kind of explains this. You first prime the clicker, and I have videos to show you how to do that. And so the click means you just did what I wanted. What I do is I do it inside the house where the dog's nice and relaxed. Sit, it sits. As soon as the butt hits the ground, I click and give it a treat and say sit. Take a step away, dog follows me. Sit or lay down. And I have it do like 5 or 10 or 15 obedience commands inside right by the door. And then I'll come outside, and right there I say sit again. I take 2 steps, sit again. And so what you're doing is help the dog practice focusing on you and knowing it's getting these rewards, and the clicker puts it in game mode. You know, oh, I really want to do this. And then we move to a gradually more difficult situation outside, but there should be no dogs outside, no little pipsqueak dog barking, no kids. And the dog practices listening to you and being obedient with you out in a more advanced environment. Kind of like what I talked about in the video above. We got to create that situation, the easiest version, and help the dog practice and build up the skill set, and then make it more and more difficult. You had difficulty getting the dog to listen to you inside at times. There's no way you're going to get the dog to listen to you outside. But that clicker, man, it's amazing. That dog used to fence fight and actually got its paw stuck through the fence. The guardian went over to free the dog and it bit her. And he's like a Mastiff Dane mix. And so he's a big dog. And she's like amazed. She goes, now there are other dogs are out there because I've been doing the clicker training. I can say, come. And the dog will stop barking and come over to me. Depends on how close the dog is. But you have to start somewhere. Whiskey. Come. Sit. Well, you're sitting way off camera, but that I promise you is Whiskey. Sit. This is Whiskey and Diesel's roadmap to success. Now, before I summarize this, I'd like you guys to practice this stuff for about a month. If after a month he is still being reactive towards, after a month, that's probably when I would start arranging to have people come by. You could practice going down the driveway with the treats like I talked about earlier, but nobody there. But I really want you guys to focus on this first month of all the stuff that I've just got done summarizing. The teaching new tricks and commands, you can sneak one of those in there as well, but make sure you do that for the next like 2 months or so, every other week. After about a month of doing that, if you are still having these problems, give us a shot back and we can set a session up with me and Anna where we can maybe do a little BAT or behavior adjustment training, which is where we create scenarios that are similar to scenarios he reacts or fails at, like meeting outside, but we stack the deck in his favor and do a bunch of things to put him in a position to succeed. And when he does the things that we want, then we gradually take the next level, kind of what I've been talking about throughout this whole session. Start as easy as possible, work our way up to the real world situation so the dog knows how you want it to behave. All right, well, that dog over there is Whiskey, and Diesel is inside, and I'm David. And this is the roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.